June 15, 2017. 4:36 p.m. Stark County Police receive a 911 call from the Stockdale family residence in Beach City, Ohio. The caller hangs up immediately without explanation. When deputies arrive at the remote farm, they find the front door open and hear a gunshot as they approach the house. Inside, they discover Jacob Stockdale with a self-inflicted shotgun wound to the head, barely alive. Upstairs in the bathroom, his mother Kathy and younger brother James lie dead from shotgun blasts. The 25-year-old fiddler who once won the Ohio State Grand Championship had killed 2 family members before trying to take his own life. But what could drive a seemingly normal young man from a musical, religious family to commit such devastating violence? If you want to explore the psychological factors behind family murders, please like this video, subscribe to our channel for weekly true crime investigations, and share this story to help others understand these complex cases. The answer lies in understanding how this family lived completely cut off from the outside world. Tim and Kathy Stockdale made a deliberate decision to move their growing family to a remote farm in Beach City, Ohio, seeking to create what they believed would be the perfect Christian environment for raising their 4 sons: Calvin, Charles, Jacob, and James. The Stockdales were deeply religious Christians who viewed the outside world as corrupt and dangerous, leading them to implement an extraordinarily strict household regimen designed to shield their children from any worldly influences. Kathy Stockdale established rigid daily routines that governed every aspect of her sons' lives. Each morning the boys were awakened at exactly 7:30 and given precisely 4 minutes to reach the breakfast table. Any lateness resulted in a 25-cent fine, demonstrating the level of control exercised over even the most basic daily activities. Following breakfast, extensive farm chores and household duties consumed the remainder of their day. The family operated under Kathy's token reward system, where children who completed their assigned tasks with a glad heart could earn small tokens. These tokens could be exchanged for minimal privileges, such as listening to approved family-friendly radio programming under strict parental supervision. However, opportunities for rewards remained severely limited within the household's restrictive framework. The Stockdale children were prohibited from watching television, playing video games, listening to most forms of music, making friends outside the family circle, or talking to girls their age. Kathy viewed dating as physically dangerous due to pregnancy concerns, effectively eliminating any possibility of normal teenage social development. The boys were homeschooled using a Christian-oriented curriculum that emphasized biblical stories over scientific facts and secular education. This isolation was complete and intentional. The Stockdale sons had virtually no contact with peers their age, no exposure to contemporary culture, and no opportunity to develop independent thoughts or preferences outside their mother's carefully controlled environment. Every decision, from clothing choices to daily activities, remained under parental authority. The family's remote farm location further reinforced their separation from mainstream society. Neighbors were scarce, and opportunities for outside interaction were systematically eliminated. This created an environment where Kathy's strict interpretation of Christian values became the sole framework for understanding the world. However, this oppressive atmosphere would eventually contribute to consequences that nobody in the family could have anticipated, setting the stage for a tragedy that would shatter their isolated world forever. Despite the restrictive environment that defined every other aspect of their lives, the Stockdale family discovered one remarkable outlet that brought them together: bluegrass music. This shared passion became the family's primary source of joy and bonding within an otherwise highly regimented household structure. Jacob Stockdale demonstrated exceptional musical abilities from an early age. He learned to play the fiddle at just 7 years old, displaying natural talent that quickly developed into genuine mastery. Before reaching puberty, Jacob had already achieved remarkable proficiency on his instrument, suggesting an innate musical gift that transcended his isolated upbringing. Jacob's skills continued advancing throughout his childhood and teenage years. He began winning fiddle competitions across Ohio, establishing himself as a formidable young musician in the bluegrass community. His crowning achievement came in 2012 when he earned the title of Ohio State Grand Fiddle Champion, a prestigious recognition that highlighted his exceptional abilities. The success of Jacob's musical development inspired the formation of a complete family band. Each member found their role within this musical ensemble. Calvin mastered the banjo, Charles played mandolin, James took up the upright bass, and Jacob served as the primary fiddler. Their father Tim anchored the group as guitarist and main vocalist, though all the sons contributed vocal harmonies to their performances. The Stockdale family band performed regularly across Ohio, developing a decent following within the bluegrass music community. They recorded albums and maintained an active performance schedule that showcased their genuine musical talents. Audiences appreciated their tight harmonies, skilled instrumental work, and authentic approach to traditional bluegrass music. However, even their musical success remained filtered through the family's restrictive worldview. Performance opportunities provided limited exposure to outside influences, as Tim and Kathy carefully controlled which venues they would accept and which events they would attend. This musical foundation would prove crucial in understanding the complex family dynamics that existed beneath the surface of their performances. Their talent represented both an escape from daily restrictions and another form of family control, creating tensions that would eventually lead to their fateful decision to expose their lifestyle to millions of television viewers. In 2008, the Stockdale family made a decision that would forever change their lives when they agreed to participate in the reality television show, Wife Swap. The boys had repeatedly begged their parents to join the program, perhaps sensing an opportunity for change in their rigidly controlled existence. The show paired the Stockdales with the Tonkovich family from Illinois, creating a stark contrast between two completely different parenting philosophies. The Tonkoviches represented everything the Stockdales opposed: a permissive household where children woke whenever they wanted, wore whatever clothes they chose, and ate primarily fast food without any imposed rules or structure. When Lori Tonkovich arrived at the Stockdale farm and read about the boys' rigid daily routine, her reaction was immediate and emotional. She was shocked by the level of control exercised over the children's lives, and deeply disturbed by their apparent lack of normal childhood experiences. Her genuine concern for the boys was evident when she stated, "God, I feel so sad for these kids. I'm going to take them all home with me." Lori's attempts to understand the boys' perspectives revealed the depth of their psychological conditioning. When she asked what they might want to do if given freedom, the boys couldn't even formulate answers, having never been encouraged to develop personal preferences or independent thoughts. During her week managing the Stockdale household, Lori introduced cable television and video game consoles, attempting to provide the boys with normal teenage entertainment options. The children's reactions were mixed, showing both excitement at these new experiences and visible guilt over potentially violating their mother's strict rules. Jacob's response proved particularly telling and concerning. When encouraged to watch television programming, he broke down crying and ran outside, expressing genuine fear that engaging with secular entertainment would condemn him to hell. This dramatic reaction demonstrated the psychological control exercised over the family and the deep-seated fear instilled in the children. Lori worked tirelessly to implement changes in the family's lifestyle, but encountered complete resistance from Tim and Kathy Stockdale. The parents remained absolutely convinced of their methods and showed no willingness to consider alternative approaches to child rearing. The contrast between the two mothers became evident in their final statements. Lori admitted she couldn't think of anything from the Stockdale family that she would want to bring back to her own household. Meanwhile, Kathy remained rigidly convinced of her approach, supported completely by Tim's unwavering backing of her strict rules. Rather than bringing positive change, this television exposure may have planted dangerous seeds of discontent within the family structure, creating tensions that would simmer beneath the surface for nearly a decade before exploding into unimaginable violence. Following their wife swap experience in 2008, the Stockdale family returned to their routine life on the Ohio farm. However, as the older sons reached adulthood, the family unit began experiencing gradual changes that would alter their dynamics significantly over the following 9 years. Calvin Stockdale, the eldest son, made the decision to attend Hillsdale College in Michigan, where he pursued education studies and eventually became a teacher. His choice to attend a college located hundreds of miles from the family farm represented a significant step toward independence and escape from the restrictive household environment. Charles Stockdale followed a similar path, leaving Ohio to pursue medical studies in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Like his older brother, Charles chose an educational opportunity that required him to travel thousands of miles from home, suggesting both sons were actively seeking distance from their childhood environment, rather than simply pursuing convenient educational opportunities. The departures of Calvin and Charles left Jacob and James as the only children remaining in the family home well into their 20s. James's decision to stay was partially explained by his enrollment in business studies at a nearby university, and his dreams of eventually managing the family's bluegrass band from a business perspective. However, Jacob's reasons for remaining at home remained more mysterious and concerning. Despite being in his mid-20s with proven musical talent and demonstrated abilities, Jacob chose to continue living under his parents' strict control, rather than pursuing independence like his older brothers. The family band continued operating as a trio during this period, with Jacob, James, and Tim performing regularly across Ohio. They maintained their decent following within the bluegrass music community, recorded albums, and sustained their performance schedule despite the reduced lineup. Yet beneath this apparent normalcy, questions lingered about Jacob's psychological state and future plans. Why would a talented young man with obvious abilities choose to remain in an isolated family environment that had restricted his development throughout childhood and adolescence? Jacob may have appeared perfectly all right on the outside during these years, but psychological professionals would later suggest that dangerous internal turmoil was building during this seemingly peaceful period. The apparent calm following the wife swap experience masked whatever psychological pressures were mounting within Jacob, pressures that would eventually manifest in ways that nobody in the family could have anticipated or prepared for. This period of seeming stability was actually building toward an explosive conclusion that would destroy the family forever. On June 15, 2017, at approximately 4:36 in the afternoon, Stark County Police received a 911 emergency call from the Stockdale family residence. The call ended abruptly when the caller hung up without providing any information about the nature of the emergency, immediately raising concerns among dispatch personnel about potential danger at the remote farm location. The suspicious nature of the disconnected emergency call prompted law enforcement to dispatch deputies to investigate the situation at the Stockdale property. Given the family's isolated location and the unusual circumstances of the call, officers approached the residence with appropriate caution while hoping to find a simple explanation for the communication breakdown. Upon arriving at the farm, deputies immediately noticed that the front door of the house stood open, which struck them as unusual given the family's typically private and controlled lifestyle. As they approached the residence to investigate further, officers observed what appeared to be someone lying on the floor inside the home. Law enforcement personnel gave verbal commands to anyone who might be inside the house, attempting to establish communication and assess the situation. However, they received no response to their calls, increasing their concern about the safety of the family members and the potential danger of the situation. As deputies continued their approach to the residence, they heard a loud gunshot discharge from inside the house. The timing of this gunshot, occurring just as law enforcement arrived on the scene, created an extremely tense and dangerous situation that required immediate response and investigation. Upon entering the home, officers discovered Jacob Stockdale with a severe shotgun wound to his head. He remained barely alive despite his injuries, and the positioning of the firearm next to his body strongly indicated that the wound was self-inflicted. Emergency medical personnel were immediately summoned to provide life-saving treatment. Deputies continued their search of the residence, moving upstairs to conduct a thorough investigation of the entire property. Their systematic search led them to the bathroom, where they made a horrific discovery that would haunt the community and law enforcement personnel for years to come. Inside the bathroom, officers found the bodies of Kathy and James Stockdale lying on the floor. Both had been killed by massive shotgun blasts that had caused devastating injuries. The violence of their deaths shocked even experienced law enforcement personnel who had responded to numerous crime scenes throughout their careers. Tim Stockdale was fortunately outside the home at the time of the shootings, sparing him from becoming another victim of the family violence. However, when informed of the tragedy that had befallen his wife and youngest son, he was understandably devastated by the loss and the realization that his son Jacob was responsible. The only logical conclusion available to investigators was that Jacob had methodically killed his mother and younger brother before attempting to take his own life. Emergency medical personnel worked urgently to stabilize Jacob's condition and transport him to a local hospital for emergency surgery and intensive care treatment. In the immediate aftermath of the tragedy, surviving family members released heartfelt statements honoring the memory of Kathy and James Stockdale, while attempting to process the incomprehensible violence that had shattered their family forever. Calvin Stockdale, the eldest brother, provided a touching tribute to James that highlighted his youngest brother's personality and aspirations. James. Our youngest brother has always been a catalyst of family fun. Aside from being a gifted musician, James enjoyed dancing and had an innate love of people. James was working on a business degree and hoped to go to the business side of entertainment. He leaves behind many friends and a family that love him dearly. Tim Stockdale honored his deceased wife with a statement that emphasized her dedication to family and faith. Kathy has been my beloved wife of 32 years, and a wonderful mother to our 4 sons. She loved nothing more than being a mother and grandmother. She had a strong love of learning and was passionate about her Christian faith, natural health, and organic farming. Notably absent from these family statements was any direct mention of Jacob by name. Calvin provided only a cursory acknowledgement thanking the medical center that treated Jacob for his injuries, though he avoided specifically naming his brother who had committed the murders. Jacob's suicide attempt resulted in severe and life-altering injuries that complicated the legal proceedings that would eventually follow. The shotgun blast caused him to lose sight completely in his left eye, and resulted in serious brain damage that affected his cognitive functioning and ability to understand complex situations. These extensive injuries raised significant questions about Jacob's fitness to stand trial and his capacity to understand the legal proceedings against him. Medical professionals needed to assess whether he possessed the mental competency required to participate in his own defense and comprehend the charges he would face. Law enforcement officials made the decision to delay filing formal charges against Jacob until he had sufficiently recovered from his physical injuries. This created a period of legal uncertainty that would extend for more than a year, while Jacob received medical treatment and underwent psychological evaluation. Throughout Jacob's recovery period, his surviving family members continued providing support despite the horrific nature of his crimes. Their unwavering loyalty to Jacob, likely rooted in their strong Christian beliefs about forgiveness and redemption, represented both a touching display of family bonds and a complex emotional situation given the circumstances. The community and law enforcement agencies faced a difficult waiting period as medical professionals worked to determine Jacob's recovery progress and his eventual fitness for legal proceedings. On September 26, 2018, more than a year after the murders, Stark County Police finally filed formal charges against Jacob Stockdale. He was charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder for the deaths of his mother, Kathy, and brother James, with his bail set at $1 million. Jacob's defense attorney immediately recognized the complexity of the case given his client's severe injuries and questionable mental state following his suicide attempt. On October 9, the defense filed a motion requesting a competency evaluation to determine whether Jacob was mentally capable of standing trial and understanding the legal proceedings against him. Jacob entered a plea of not guilty by reason of insanity, setting the stage for extensive psychiatric evaluation and legal proceedings. He was subsequently transferred to Heartland Behavioral Health Hospital for comprehensive psychiatric observation and professional mental health assessment. Jacob would spend over a year under medical supervision at the psychiatric facility, while doctors conducted thorough evaluations of his mental state. Medical professionals utilized mock trials with legal terminology to assess whether Jacob understood basic court procedures, the nature of the charges against him, and the potential consequences of conviction. However, Jacob's behavior during his hospitalization raised questions about his claimed mental incompetency. He made 2 separate escape attempts from the psychiatric facility, which prosecutors would later argue demonstrated his awareness of his situation and his desire to avoid facing justice for his crimes. The first escape attempt occurred in November 2019, when Jacob attempted to hide behind a stack of books to avoid detection by hospital staff. 2 months later, he made a second escape attempt by trying to blend in with visitors who were leaving the psychiatric institute. The COVID-19 pandemic created additional delays in Jacob's sanity hearings, extending an already complex legal process. Court proceedings were repeatedly postponed due to health restrictions and safety protocols implemented throughout the judicial system. In September 2020, Jacob appeared before Judge Frank Forcione via video link for a competency hearing. During this appearance, Jacob refused to respond when directly addressed by the judge, maintaining complete silence despite repeated attempts at communication. Whether Jacob's silence represented genuine mental disorientation, fear of technology due to his isolated upbringing, or a calculated strategy to strengthen his insanity plea, remained unclear to court observers and legal experts. Jacob's refusal to participate in court proceedings ultimately did not work in his favor regarding his competency determination. On December 31, 2020, a court-appointed psychologist declared that Jacob was mentally fit to stand trial and capable of understanding the charges against him. Despite this competency ruling, the pandemic continued causing delays in the legal proceedings, while family members worked behind the scenes to advocate for Jacob's case. Behind the scenes, surviving members of the Stockdale family engaged in extraordinary efforts to advocate for leniency on Jacob's behalf. Despite the fact that Jacob had killed Kathy and James in cold blood, His remaining family members actively petitioned the judge to consider a lenient sentence if Jacob were convicted of the murder charges. This remarkable display of Christian forgiveness and family loyalty demonstrated the depth of their religious convictions and their commitment to redemption, even in the face of such devastating family violence. Their willingness to forgive Jacob and advocate for his future represented both an extraordinary act of faith and a complex emotional situation that defied easy understanding. The specific reasons behind Jacob's eventual change in legal strategy remain unclear. His decision to abandon his insanity defense may have resulted from a plea agreement influenced by his family's advocacy efforts, a personal shift in his own mindset about accepting responsibility, or pressure from the extended legal proceedings that had dragged on for nearly 4 years. On April 28, 2021, almost 4 years after committing the murders, Jacob Stockdale finally appeared in court and pleaded guilty to both counts of murder. This plea brought legal closure to a case that had haunted the community and the family for years. The judge's response to the family's requests for leniency was evident in Jacob's sentence, which many observers considered surprisingly lenient given the severity of his crimes. Jacob received 15 years imprisonment for each murder count, a sentence that reflected consideration of the family's advocacy and possibly other mitigating factors. Under this sentencing arrangement, Jacob will become eligible for parole consideration in 2048. His surviving family members have indicated their continued support and suggested they might be willing to welcome him back into the family upon his eventual release from prison. Their ability to maintain such forgiveness and family loyalty can be attributed to their deep commitment to Christian values, emphasizing redemption, second chances, and the power of forgiveness to heal even the most devastating wounds. However, while this legal resolution provided closure to the formal proceedings, it left the most important question completely unanswered: why Jacob committed these senseless murders in the first place. The resolution of Jacob Stockdale's legal case provided closure to the formal proceedings, but it left the most crucial question completely unanswered. What motivated a seemingly normal young man to kill his mother and brother before attempting suicide? Jacob has never provided any explanation for his actions, and police have remained silent regarding potential motives, leaving experts and observers to speculate about the psychological factors that led to this family tragedy. Mental health professionals have proposed several theories to explain Jacob's behavior, beginning with the possibility that severe psychological disorders ran within the family. Kathy Stockdale's extreme regimentation of her children's daily routines and her obsessive control over every aspect of their lives suggested she may have suffered from severe obsessive-compulsive disorder or other mental health conditions. Jacob may have inherited similar mental health issues that were exacerbated by a lifetime of social isolation and restricted personal development. His inability to form normal relationships, develop independent decision-making skills, or experience typical childhood and adolescent growth may have created internal psychological pressure that eventually became unbearable. Kathy's rigid belief system characterized leisure and fun as sinful, teaching that moral righteousness could only be achieved through constant work and productivity. This philosophy denied Jacob any opportunity to develop his own personality, preferences, or independence, leaving him completely dependent on his mother's structure and control well into his 20s. Two primary theories have emerged regarding Jacob's specific motivations for the murders. The first suggests that Jacob simply reached a psychological breaking point and sought violent revenge against his mother for what he perceived as years of psychological abuse and control over his life. The second theory proposes a more complex psychological dynamic. Jacob wanted to escape his oppressive situation, but couldn't bear the thought of leaving James to continue experiencing the same restrictive upbringing that had damaged his own development. According to this theory, killing James represented a twisted act of mercy, preventing his younger brother from enduring continued psychological harm. Perhaps most haunting is the final YouTube video uploaded to Kathy's channel just 3 months before the murders. The video shows Jacob and James performing a song celebrating James's 21st birthday, with lyrics about fear of growing up, and James asking, "Is there a third option besides childhood or adulthood?" In this final recording, both brothers appear loving, normal, and genuinely happy together, making the subsequent violence even more incomprehensible. Jacob doesn't look like a murderer in that video, reinforcing the disturbing reality that darkness can hide beneath apparently normal family relationships, and that sometimes even thorough investigation cannot fully explain human behavior at its most destructive.